Is digital distraction keeping you from living your best life? I'm Tonya Hall for ZDNet and Tech Republic, and joining me is Brian Solis, digital anthropologist and best-selling author. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, hello.
So I know you've been here before. We've had many conversations, and I've known you for years. But just to give a little background to our people watching this video, give us a brief summary of your professional resume, and especially as it relates to becoming a digital anthropologist and futurist.
Sure. I've spent the last 20 plus years studying disruptive technology and its impact on business. And that's the digital analyst side. I write a lot of research reports on various focus topics like digital transformation, corporate innovation, the future of retail, future of customer experience, the future of employee experience and corporate culture. And then on the digital anthropology side, I study those impacts on behavior, on markets, on employees, on customers, and play those behaviors out into kind of bringing both ends to the middle, helping businesses compete differently for the future, and then helping them understand how people are changing to build bridges to them instead of those markets kind of growing apart and creating disruption. And then I also write books in between all of that stuff. And I've written 7 business books, and I'm about to release my first ever personal book.
Well, and you've got an interesting story about that. In fact, you and I were discussing. So the new book is titled Life Scale. What's the thesis and what motivated you to write it?
Yeah, I don't know that it was a book that I set out to write. Actually, I know it wasn't a book I set out to write. I was actually trying to write a follow-up to my last book, and I just couldn't get to the depths that I had. It was at that time that would have been my 8th book, and so you think I'd have it figured out by now. But I was struggling to get to depths and clarity. The creativity was definitely not at the level I was hoping it would be, and I just kept iterating on the proposal, and next thing I know, we're months and months into this, and I'm just completely not happy, but also just kind of flustered and defeated, and I just lost interest in it, which sucked because that was supposed to be a big book for me, and I kind of just chalked it up to just being too busy with all the research. Writer's block, uninspired, which is weird though, because I really wanted to write that book. And after a little bit of research and introspection and reflection, I actually had ironically succumbed to the digital distractions that I had been studying for many years and didn't even realize it. And that's when I decided to point all of my research into trying to self-diagnose and understand what does our relationship with our phones, our favorite apps and services and networks, what does that do to you? And that was the impetus for what would later become the book, but it was my next year's worth of research.
So are humans wired to adapt to the pace of change that we see with artificial intelligence, spatial computing, blockchain, crypto, and other disruptive digital transformation technologies?
That's a really good question, because I don't know that there's a universal answer to it. I mean, we're capable of being agile enough to rewire ourselves to keep up with everything. I think the challenge that we have, and certainly something I learned along the way, is that we have something called cognitive biases that sort of prevent us from seeing the need to have to rewire ourselves in order to compete differently or think differently or work differently. That we sort of protect us as ourselves by saying, no, this is fine, that's for something else, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. But at the same time, there's this other element of just forced rewiring, which is also happening. So for example, every time you reach for your phone, every time that you start using your favorite apps and services, anytime that you find yourself multitasking, you're actually training yourself to compete, to move, to think, to operate much, much, much faster than you ever have in the past. And while we think we're actually doing great work and we're keeping up with everything, we're not. We're actually performing at lower levels. Our quality is much lower than it could be. And along with that comes this sense of anxiety, a lot of self-esteem and confidence issues that we haven't necessarily grappled with yet, because we've exchanged that depth of learning and understanding for the quick hits of dopamine and oxytocin and all of those other things.
What are the symptoms of someone suffering acute digital distraction? And how do we go beyond just addressing symptoms? Is the solution really just as simple as turning off our phones and routers?
Oh, again, that's a good question, because I don't know that there's I don't, so my thesis was, how do you improve focus and creativity and depth without abandoning technology? Because I don't know about you, but I can't. I need to be on a lot of these platforms and networks. I need a mobile device to be able to get things done as I need to get things done. So the answer is putting your phone down, or unplugging, or deleting apps. Those treat the symptoms, but they don't necessarily treat the problem. And the strange challenge that I have is trying to sell a book to people who are distracted but don't know that they're distracted. So I think the real answer to that is getting people to see that no amount of apps like Headspace or Calm, or going to digital detox camp, or putting your phone away during dinner are going to solve your problem. They're going to help you get through those moments, and help you maybe get a little clarification or clarity in what's important to you. But I think the whole purpose of the book was to go through this journey. Let me take a step back real quick. The one thing that I learned was that in this modern life, we're given tools and services and access to information. We're given platforms to share our own information. And this is the first time that we've had this type of democratized access, and also this creativity, or this creation, the ability to create. And our parents, their parents, our previous generations didn't have to deal with this. They've all had their own media revolutions, but they were still much more broadcast oriented, right? Not everybody was coming to TV broadcaster or radio broadcaster. But we have access to all these networks. We have access to real-time information. We have access to people that we never would have met or seen or got to know before. And with that comes these new rules, these new ideas, these new behaviors, these new standards, these new norms and values that nothing in our life prepared us for that. There's no instruction manual, no parents, no mentors, no teachers, no managers who said, I've got this all figured out. Let me tell you what to do. We're all figuring it out on our own. And a lot of us are figuring it out faster than others. Some of us don't even realize we have something to figure out. And so what we needed was a manual for life today. What does success look like? Why does success have to be what my parents or their parents said success was like? Or what's the standards for happiness? What does happiness even mean? So kind of recentering ourselves and reimagining or rethinking or getting to know what's important today, so that when we do make decisions about tech, or when we do make decisions about how much we're going to live online, or how we're going to live our best life, that we actually know what that means. And then tech's become an enabler for that.
But isn't our increasing standard of living based on being more and more productive through technology? I mean, how do we justify the time and cost for a cure?
Well, there's some of the research I'm doing right now is to answer that question. So I have to live two lives. One is the author of this book, and the other is as this analyst doing this research. But one of the research projects I'm leading right now is the true cost of distraction in a number of formats. So, for example, at work, for example, the average person, and I think these numbers are lower now, are higher now than when this research was done, but the average person looks at their phone about 1,500 times a week, and that adds up to about 177 minutes a day. And most of that is personal stuff. And if you're breaking your rhythm or your flow to do that, then you are going to have to ramp back up to get into your work. And then when it gets hard, you find yourself, whether you know it or not, actually reaching for the device again, because it's a nice breakaway. It's a good sense of relief and validation. But the more you do that, the more you're actually costing the company something, and the more you're actually costing your level of output. And so you could put hard numbers to that and show that all of that time is actually costing the company X, Y, and Z in terms of lost productivity and also loss of caliber of work.
How do you know when you've reached a good balance between responding to digital demands and actually leading your best life?
I think, oh, wow. Okay, so the demands are self-imposed, I think. We feel like we have to keep up. That's why FOMO became a big thing. I like to say that FOMO is finally over, missing out. But when we look at our friends online, and say it's Instagram or Snapchat, I mean, everybody is living this incredible life that is not real. We have access to filters that are disorienting and sort of are our even self-perception. I mean, you have these plastic surgeons who are rolling out new programs and products to help you look like your favorite filter, and that's unfortunately lowering the threshold for ages that are coming in for plastic surgery. So I think you have these fallacies of what best life is, when in fact the only way to really answer that question is to know what's best for your life, and maybe that we realize maybe we're not on the path we should be on, and that we're not unlocking the possibilities or the opportunities that are in our best interest because we haven't really taken the time to figure out what's best for us.
Brian Solis, digital anthropologist and best-selling author. If somebody wants to connect with you, maybe they want to get a copy of your new book or find you at South by, how can they do that?
Well, the book is called Life Scale. It's on Amazon and bookstores, at bookstores everywhere. The website for it is lifescaling.me. And then I'm at Brian Solis everywhere, and you could find more information at briansolis.com as well.
Sounds good. And if you guys want to find more of my interviews, you can do that right here on ZDNet or Tech Republic, or go to my website, tonyahall.net. I've got links to all my social sites. Thanks for watching.